Chapter 8, Part 1 of Agriculture for Beginners. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sarah Jennings. Agriculture for Beginners by Charles William Burkett. Chapter 8, Part 1 Farm Crops. Every crop of the farm has been changed and improved in many ways since its forefathers were wild plants. Those plants that best serve the needs of the farmer and of farm animals have undergone the most changes, and have received also the greatest care and attention in their production and improvement. While we have very many different kinds of farm crops, the cultivated soil of the world is occupied by a very few. In our country, the crop that is most valuable and that occupies the greatest land area is generally known as the grass crop. Included in the general term grass crop are the grasses and clovers that are used for pasturage, as well as for hay. Next to grass in value come the great cereal, corn, and the most important fiber crop, cotton, closely followed by the great bread crop, wheat. Oats rank fifth in value, potatoes sixth, and tobacco seventh. These figures are for 1913. Success in growing any crop is largely due to the suitableness of soil and climate to that crop. When the planter selects both the most suitable soil and the most suitable climate for each crop, he not only gets the most bountiful yield from the crop, but in addition he gets the most desirable quality of product. A little careful observation and study soon teach what kinds of soil produce crops of the highest excellence. This learned, the planter is able to grow in each field the several crops best adapted to that special type of soil. Thus we have tobacco soils, trucking soils, wheat and corn soils. Dairying can be most profitably followed in sections where crops like cowpeas, clover, alfalfa, and corn are peculiarly at home. No one should try to grow a new crop in his section until he has found out whether the crop which he wants to grow is adapted to his soil and climate. The figures below give the average amount of money made annually an acre on our chief crops. Flowers and plants, $1,911. Nursery products, $261. Onions, $140. Sugarcane, $55. Small fruits, $110. Hops, $175. Vegetables, $78. Tobacco, $80. Sweet potatoes, $55. Hemp, $53. Potatoes, $78. Sugar beets, $54. Sorghum cane, $22. Cotton, $22. Orchard fruits, $110. Peanuts, $21. Flaxseed, $14. Cereals, $14. Hay and forage, $11. Castor beans, $6. United States Census Report. Section 35. Cotton. Although cotton was cultivated on the eastern continent before America was discovered, this crop owes its present kingly place in the business world to the zeal and intelligence of its American growers. So great an influence does it wield in modern industrial life that it is often called King Cotton. Thousands upon thousands of people scan the newspapers each day to see what price its staple is bringing. From its bounty, a vast army of toilers who plant its seed, who pick its bolls, who gin its staple, who spin and weave its lint, who grind its seed, who refine its oil, draw daily bread. Does not its proper production deserve the best thought that can be given it? In the cotton belt, almost any well-drained soil will produce cotton. The following kinds of soil are admirably suited to this plant: red and gray loams with good clay subsoil, sandy soils over clay and sandstone and limestone, rich, well-drained bottomlands. The safest soils are medium loams. Cotton land must always be well drained. Cotton was originally a tropical plant, but strange to say, it seems to thrive best in temperate zones. The cotton plant does best, according to Newman, in climates which have 1. 6 months of freedom from frost, 2. A moderate, well-distributed rainfall during the plant's growing period, and 3. Abundant sunshine and little rain during the plant's maturing period. In America, the southern states from Virginia to Texas have these climatic qualities, and it is in these states that the cotton industry has been developed, until it is one of the giant industries of the world. This development has been very rapid. As late as 1736, the cotton plant was grown as an ornamental flowering plant in many front yards. In 1911, 16,250,276 bales of cotton were grown in the South. In recent years, the soil and climate of Lower California and parts of Arizona and New Mexico have been found well adapted to cotton. There are a great many varieties of cotton. Two types are mainly grown by the practical American farmer. These are the short-stapled upland variety, most commonly grown in the southern states, and the beautiful long-stapled black-seeded Sea Island type that grows upon the islands and a portion of the mainland of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. The air of the coast seems necessary for the production of this latter variety. The seeds of the Sea Island cotton are small, smooth, and black. They are so smooth and stick so loosely to the lint that they are separated from it by roller gins instead of by saw gins. When these seeds are planted away from the soil and air of their ocean home, the plant does not thrive. Many attempts have been made and are still being made to increase the length of the staple of the upland types. The methods used are as follows: selection of seed having a long fiber, special cultivation and fertilization, crossing the short-stapled cotton on the long-stapled cotton. This last process, as already explained, is called hybridizing. Many of these attempts have succeeded, and there are now a large number of varieties which excel the older varieties in profitable yield. The new varieties are each year being more widely grown. Every farmer should study the new types and select the one that will best suit his land. The new types have been developed under the best tillage. Therefore, if a farmer would keep the new type as good as it was when he began to grow it, he must give it the same good tillage and practice seed selection. The cotton plant is nourished by a taproot that will seek food as deeply as loose earth will permit the root to penetrate. Hence, in preparing land for this crop, the first plowing should be done at least with a 2-horse plow and should be deep and thorough. This deep plowing not only allows the taproot to penetrate, but it also admits a circulation of air. On some cotton farms, it is the practice to break the land in winter or early spring, and then let it lie naked until planting time. This is not a good practice. The winter rains wash more plant food out of unprotected soil than a single crop would use. It would be better in the late summer or fall to plant crimson clover or some other protective and enriching crop on land that is to be planted in cotton in the spring. This crop, in addition to keeping the land from being injuriously washed, would greatly help the coming cotton crop by leaving the soil full of vegetable matter. In preparing for cotton planting, first disc the land thoroughly, then break with a heavy plow and harrow until a fine and mellow seed bed is formed. Do not spare the harrow at this time. It destroys many a weed that, if allowed to grow, would have to be cut by costly hoeing. Thorough work before planting saves much expensive work in the later days of the crop. Moreover, no man can afford to allow his plant food and moisture to go to nourish weeds, even for a short time. The rows should be from 3 to 4 feet apart. The width depends upon the richness of the soil. On rich land, the rows should be at least 4 feet apart. This width allows the luxuriant plant to branch and fruit well. On poorer lands, the distance of the rows should not be so great. The distribution of the seed in the row is of course most cheaply done by the planter. As a rule, it is best not to ridge the land for the seed. Flat culture saves moisture and often prevents damage to the roots. In some sections, however, where the land is flat and full of water, ridging seems necessary if the land cannot be drained. The cheapest way of cultivating a crop is to prevent grass and weeds from rooting, not to wait to destroy them after they are well rooted. To do this, it is well to run the 2-horse smoothing harrow over the land, across the rows, a few days after the young plants are up. Repeat the harrowing in 6 or 8 days. In addition to destroying the young grass and weeds, this harrowing also removes many of the young cotton plants, and thereby saves much hoeing at chopping out time. When the plants are about 2 inches high, they are chopped out to secure an evenly distributed stand. It has been the custom to leave 2 stalks to a hill, but many growers are now leaving only 1. The number of times the crop has to be worked depends on the soil and the season. If the soil is dry and porous, cultivate as often as possible, especially after each rain. Never allow a crust to form after a rain. The roots of plants must have air. Cultivation after each rain forms a dry mulch on the top of the soil and thus prevents rapid evaporation of moisture. If the fiber, the lint, only is removed from the land on which cotton is grown, cotton is the least exhaustive of the great crops grown in the United States. According to some recent experiments, an average crop of cotton removes in the lint only 2.75 pounds of nitrogen, phosphoric acid, potash, lime, and magnesia per acre, while a crop of 10 bushels of wheat per acre removes 32.36 pounds of the same elements of plant food. Inasmuch as this crop takes so little plant food from the soil, the cotton farmer has no excuse for allowing his land to decrease in productiveness. 2 things will keep his land in bounteous harvest condition. First, let him return the seeds in some form to the land, or what is better, feed the ground seeds to cattle, make a profit from the cattle, and return manure to the land in place of the seeds. Second, at the last working, let him sow some crop like crimson clover or rye in the cotton rows to protect the soil during the winter and to leave humus in the ground for the spring. The stable manure, if that is used, should be broadcasted over the fields at the rate of 6 to 10 tons per acre. If commercial fertilizers are used, it may be best to make 2 applications. To give the young plants a good start, apply a portion of the fertilizer in the drill just before planting. Then when the first blooms appear, put the remainder of the fertilizer in drills near the plants but not too close. Many good cotton growers, however, apply all the fertilizer at one time. Relation of stock to the cotton crop. On many farms, much of the money for which the cotton is sold in the fall has to go to pay for the commercial fertilizer used in growing the crop. Should not this fact suggest efforts to raise just as good crops without having to buy so much fertilizer? Is there any way by which this can be done? The following suggestions may be helpful. Raise enough stock to use all the cotton seed grown on the farm. To go with the food made from the cotton seed, grow on the farm pea vine hay, clover, alfalfa, and other such nitrogen-gathering crops. This can be done at small cost. What will be the result? First, to say nothing of the money made from the cattle, the large quantity of stable manure saved will largely reduce the amount of commercial fertilizer needed. The cotton farmer cannot afford to neglect cattle raising. The cattle sections of the country are likely to make the greatest progress in agriculture because they have manure always on hand. Second, the nitrogen-gathering crops, while helping to feed the stock, also reduce the fertilizer bills by supplying one of the costly elements of the fertilizer. The ordinary cotton fertilizer consists principally of nitrogen, of potash, and of phosphoric acid. Of these 3, by far the most costly is nitrogen. Now peas, beans, clover, and peanuts will leave enough nitrogen in the soil for cotton, so that if they are raised, it is necessary to buy only phosphoric acid and sometimes potash. Section 36. Tobacco. The tobacco plant connects Indian agriculture with our own. It has always been a source of great profit to our people. In the early colonial days, tobacco was almost the only money crop. Many rich men came to America in those days merely to raise tobacco. Although tobacco will grow in almost any climate, the leaves, which as most of you know are the saleable part of the plant, get their desirable or undesirable qualities very largely from the soil, and from the climate in which they grow. The soil in which tobacco thrives best is one which has the following qualities: dryness, warmth, richness, depth, and sandiness. Commercial fertilizers also are almost a necessity, for as tobacco land is limited in area, the same land must be often planted in tobacco. Hence even a fresh, rich soil that did not at first require fertilizing soon becomes exhausted, and after the land has been robbed of its plant food by crop after crop of tobacco, Frequent application of fertilizers and other manures becomes necessary. However, even tobacco growers should rotate their crops as much as possible. Deep plowing from 9 to 13 inches is also a necessity in preparing the land, for tobacco roots go deep into the soil. After this deep plowing, harrow until the soil is thoroughly pulverized and is as fine and mellow as that of the flower garden. Unlike most other farm crops, the tobacco plant must be started first in a seed bed. To prepare a tobacco bed, the almost universal custom has been to proceed as follows. Carefully select a protected spot. Over this spot, pile brushwood and then burn it. The soil will be left dry and all the weed seeds will be killed. The bed is then carefully raked and smoothed and planted. Some farmers are now preparing their beds without burning. A tablespoonful of seed will sow a patch 25 feet square. A cheap cloth cover is put over the bed. If the seeds come up well, a patch of this size ought to furnish transplants for 5 or 6 acres. In sowing, it is wise not to cover the seed deeply. A light raking in or an even rolling of the ground is all that is needed. The time required for sprouting is from 2 to 3 weeks. The plants ought to be ready for transplanting in from 4 to 6 weeks. Weeds and grass should of course be kept out of the seed bed. The plants, when ready, are transplanted in very much the same way as cabbages and tomatoes. The transplanting was formerly done by hand, but an effective machine is now widely used. The rows should be from 3 to 3.5 feet apart, and the plants in the rows about 2 or 3 feet apart. If the plants are set so that the plow and cultivator can be run with the rows and also across the rows, they can be more economically worked. Tobacco, like corn, requires shallow cultivation. Of course, the plants should be worked often enough to give clean culture and to provide a soil mulch for saving moisture. In tobacco culture, it is necessary to pinch off the buttons and to cut off the tops of the main stalk, else much nourishment that should go to the leaves will be given to the seeds. The suckers must also be cut off for the same reason. The proper time for harvesting is not easily fixed. One becomes skillful in this work only through experience in the field. Briefly, we may say that tobacco is ready to be cut when the leaves, on being held up to the sun, show a light or golden color, when they are sticky to the touch, and when they break easily on being bent. Plants that are overripe are inferior to those that are cut early. The operations included in cutting, housing, drying, shipping, sweating, and packing require skill and practice. Section 37. Wheat. Wheat has been cultivated from earliest times. It was a chief crop in Egypt and Palestine, and still holds its importance in the temperate portions of Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and America. This crop ranks third in value in the United States. It grows in cool, in temperate, and in warm climates, and in many kinds of soil. It does best in clay loam, and worst in sandy soils. Clogged and water-soaked land will not grow wheat with profit to the farmer. For this reason, where good wheat production is desired, the soil must be well drained and in good physical condition. That is, the soil must be open, crumbly, and mellow. Clay soils that are hard and lifeless can be made valuable for wheat production by covering the surface with manure, by good tillage, and by a thorough system of crop rotation. Cowpeas and other legumes make a most valuable crop to precede wheat, for in growing they add atmospheric nitrogen to the soil, and their roots loosen the root bed, thereby admitting a free circulation of air and adding humus to the soil. Moreover, the legumes leave the soil with its grains fairly close packed, and this is a help in wheat growing. One may secure a good seed bed after cotton and corn, as well as after cowpeas and other legumes. They are summer cultivated crops, and the clean culture that has been given them renders the surface soil mellow and the undersoil firm and compact. They are not so good, however, as cowpeas, since they add no atmospheric nitrogen to the soil, as all leguminous crops do. From 1 to 2 inches is the most satisfactory depth for planting wheat. The largest number of seeds comes up when planted at this depth. A mellow soil is very helpful to good coming up, and provides a most comfortable home for the roots of the plant. A compact soil below makes a moist undersoil, and this is desirable, for the soil water is needed to dissolve plant food and to carry it up through the plant, where it is used in building tissue. There are a great many varieties of wheat. Some are bearded, some are smooth, some are winter, and others are spring varieties. The smooth-headed varieties are most agreeable to handle during harvest and at threshing time. Some of the bearded varieties, however, do so well in some soils and climates that it is desirable to continue growing them, though they are less agreeable to handle. No matter what variety you are accustomed to raise, it may be improved by careful seed selection. The seed drill is the best implement for planting wheat. It distributes the grains evenly over the whole field and leaves the mellow soil in a condition to catch what snow may fall and secure what protection it affords. In many parts of the country, because not enough livestock is raised, there is often too little manure to apply to the wheat land. Where this is the case, commercial fertilizers must be used. Since soils differ greatly, it is impossible to suggest a fertilizer adapted to all soils. The elements usually lacking in wheat soils are nitrogen, phosphoric acid, and potash. The land may be lacking in one of these plant foods or in all. In either case, a maximum crop cannot possibly be raised. The section on manuring the soil will be helpful to the wheat grower. It should be remembered always in buying fertilizers for wheat that whenever wheat follows cowpeas or clover or other legumes, there is seldom need of using nitrogen in the fertilizer. The tubercles on the pea or clover roots will furnish that. Hence, as a rule, only potash and phosphoric acid will have to be purchased as plant food. The farmer is assisted always by a study of his crop and by a knowledge of how it grows. If he find the straw inferior and short, it means that the soil is deficient in nitrogen. But on the other hand, if the straw be luxuriant and the heads small and poorly filled, he may be sure that his soil contains too little phosphoric acid and potash. Exercise. Let the pupils secure several heads of wheat and thresh each separately by hand. The grains should then be counted and their plumpness and size observed. The practical importance of this is obvious, for the larger the heads and the greater the number of grains, the larger the yield per acre. Let them plant some of the large and some of the small grains. A single test of this kind will show the importance of careful seed selection. Section 38. Corn. When the white man came to this country, he found the Indians using corn. For this reason, in addition to its name maize, it is called Indian corn. Before that time, the civilized world did not know that there was such a crop. The increase in the yield and the extension of the acres planted in this strictly American crop have kept pace with the rapid and wonderful growth of our country. Corn is king of the cereals and the most important crop of American agriculture. It grows in almost every section of America. There is hardly any limit to the uses to which its grains and its stalks are now put. Animals of many kinds are fed on rations into which it enters. Its grains in some form furnish food to more people than does any other crop except possibly rice. Its stalk and its cob are manufactured into many different and useful articles. A soil rich in either decaying animal or vegetable matter, loose, warm, and moist but not wet, will produce a better crop of corn than any other. Corn soil should always be well tilled and cultivated. The proper time to begin the cultivation of corn is before it is planted. Plow well. A shallow, worn-out soil should not be used for corn, but for cowpeas or rye. After thorough plowing, the harrow, either the disc or spring tooth, should be used to destroy all clods and leave the surface mellow and fine. The best results will be obtained by turning under a clover sod that has been manured from the savings of the barnyard. When manure is not available, commercial fertilizers will often prove profitable on poor lands. Careful trials will best determine how much fertilizer to an acre is necessary, and what kinds are to be used. A little study and experimenting on the farmer's part will soon enable him to find out both the kind and amount of fertilizer that is best suited to his land. The seed for this crop should be selected according to the plan suggested in Section 19. The most economical method of planting is by means of the horse planter, which, according to its adjustments, plants regularly in hills or in drills. A few days after planting, the cornfield should be harrowed with a fine-tooth harrow to loosen the topsoil and to kill the grass and the weed seeds that are germinating at the surface. When the corn plants are from ½ inch to 1 inch high, the harrow may be used again. A little work before the weeds sprout will save many days of labor during the rest of the season and increase the yield. Corn is a crop that needs constant cultivation, and during the growing season the soil should be stirred at least 4 times. This cultivation is for 3 reasons. 1, to destroy weeds that would take plant food and water. 2, to provide a mulch of dry soil, so as to prevent the evaporation of moisture. The action of this mulch has already been explained. 3, because tillage is manure. Constant stirring of the soil allows the air to circulate in it, provides a more effective mulch, and helps to change unavailable plant food into the form that plants use. Deep culture of corn is not advisable. The roots in their early stages of growth are shallow feeders and spread widely, only a few inches below the surface. The cultivation that destroys or disturbs the roots injures the plants and lessens the yield. We cultivate because of the 3 reasons given above, and not to stir the soil about the roots or to loosen it there. In many parts of the country, the corn stalks are left standing in the fields or are burned. This is a great mistake, for the stalks are worth a great deal for feeding horses, cattle, and sheep. These stalks may always be saved by use of the husker and shredder. Corn, after being matured and cut, can be put in shocks and left thus until dry enough to run through the husker and shredder. This machine separates the corn from the stalk and husks it. At the same time, it shreds tops, leaves, and butts into a food that is both nutritious and palatable to stock. For the amount that animals will eat, almost as much feeding value is obtained from corn stover treated in this way as from timothy hay. The practice of not using the stalks is wasteful and is fast being abandoned. The only reason that so much good food is being left to decay in the field is because so many people have not fully learned the feeding value of the stover. Exercise. To show the effect of cultivation on the yield of corn, let the pupils lay off 5 plats in some convenient field. Each plat need consist of only 2 rows, about 20 feet long. Treat each plat as follows. Plat 1. No cultivation. Let weeds grow. Plat 2. Mulch with straw. Plat 3. Shallow cultivation, not deeper than 2 inches, and at least 5 times during the growing season. Plat 4. Deep cultivation, at least 4 inches deep, so as to injure and tear out some of the roots. This is a common method. Plat 5. Root pruning, 10 inches from the stalk and 6 inches deep. Prune the roots with a long knife. Cultivate 5 times during the season. Observe plats during the summer, and at husking time note results. Section 39. Peanuts. This plant is rich in names, being known locally as ground pea, goober, earth nut, and pindar, as well as generally by the name of peanut. The peanut is a true legume, and like other legumes bears nitrogen-gathering tubercles upon its roots. The fruit is not a real nut, but rather a kind of pea or bean, and develops from the blossom. After the fall of the blossom, the spike, or flower stalk, pushes its way into the ground, where the nut develops. If unable to penetrate the soil, the nut dies. In the United States, North and South Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee have the most favorable climates for peanut culture. Suitable climate and soil, however, may be found from New Jersey to the Mississippi Valley. A high, porous, sandy loam is the most suitable. Stiffer soils, which may in some cases yield larger crops than the loams, are yet not so profitable, for stiff soils injure the color of the nut. Lime is a necessity and must be supplied if the soil is deficient. Phosphoric acid and potash are needed. Greater care than is usually bestowed should be given to the selection of the peanut seed. In addition to following the principles given in Section 18, all musty, defective seeds must be avoided, and all frosted kernels must be rejected. Before it dries, the peanut seed is easily injured by frost. The slightest frost on the vines, either before or after the plants are dug, does much harm to the tender seed. In growing peanuts, thorough preparation of the soil is much better than later cultivation. Destroy the crop of young weeds, but do not disturb the peanut crop by late cultivation. Harvest before frost, and shock high to keep the vines from the ground. The average yield of peanuts in the United States is 22 bushels an acre. In Tennessee, the yield is 29 bushels an acre, and in North Carolina and Virginia, it reaches 30 bushels an acre. End of Chapter 8, Part 1.